buffeted, very close to the limits of endurance. They reach the ruins of 4W. They fight for breath. They rebuild and salvage. Originally, it was the plan that there would be 2 West Ridge summit teams and 2 camps above 4W. But now there's enough time left for only a single desperate attempt by 1 team of 2 with 1 higher camp. For any day now, the monsoon will blow up from India with its warm, wet winds, turning the peak into a death trap of soft, new snow. But they will make the try. Having decided that the West Ridge itself is now impossible, they move out onto the adjoining north face, find a long, steep gully, and follow it upward. There are 10 of them, Unsold, Hornbein, Emerson, Corbett, Oten, and 5 Sherpas. And every step they take is on terrain where no man or living creature has ever trod. At 27,250 feet, they stop and pitch Camp 5W, a single tent. From their perch in the sky, they look down on Tibet. Then Corbett, Orton, Emerson, and the Sherpas descend, leaving Unsold and Hornbein to spend the night at 5W. In the morning, these 2 will struggle up toward the summit, and if they make it, try to descend the other side toward the South Col. If all goes well, Gersted and Bishop, coming up from the col, will meet them. On the col, the others make ready. In the junkyard, there are dozens of empty oxygen bottles, but precious little left for climbing. Yet on they go toward Camp 6, Bishop, Gersted, and 2 Sherpas, through the wind and cold. Climbing is scarcely the word for what they're doing now. They're barely creeping. 5 breaths to a step, then a rest, then more steps, more breaths. Bodies aching, minds numb. It is now 3 weeks since Camp 6 was set up by the first summit climbers, and there's no way of knowing if the tents will still be there after the winds and the storms. If not, all is lost. But the tents have held firm. They are still there. For the Sherpas, it's a great moment, for their work is done and they will descend to the col. But for Bishop and Gersted, climax and ordeal are still ahead. Comes a moment of truth, Lou Gersted said, when I feel like a little boy, humbled before this huge mountain, knowing I'm in the wrong place. Morning of May 22nd, they launched the final push, as alone as 2 human beings can be on the face of the earth. They hope that Unsold and Hornbein are climbing too on the far side of the mountain, but they have no way of knowing. They can only toil on themselves through the hours, endless hours. Even with their flow of oxygen, they can barely breathe. They can barely move their leaden feet. But still they do move. Made weak by time and fate, but strong in will to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. Before them is a sight to lift the heart and bring tears to the eyes. After 3 weeks, Jim Whittaker's maypole still stands fast, with old glory streaming in the winds of space. These are the first moving pictures ever taken from the summit of Everest. Gersted has his camera propped on the head of his ice axe, and the blur at the bottom is his furry glove. Now a blast of wind strikes the earth, quakes, Loot almost falls, and then steadies himself and completes his panorama. They have won their victory. They are filled with a great surge of joy and gratitude. But beneath them is the endless descent. And it is one thing to climb Everest, another to come down from it alive. Also, they've seen no sign of Willie Unsold and Tom Hornbein, nor have those below seen any signs of them. The hours pass. Day fades toward evening. And still the heights hold their secret. Have the four men met disaster? Are they lost? The answer will not be known until they have accomplished a great feat and suffered a great ordeal. At 4:15 in the afternoon, Gersted and Bishop started down from the summit, but they were now at the last limits of their strength and did not get far before darkness closed in. Meanwhile, for 11 long hours, Westridge's Unsold and Hornbein had battled their way up the north face above Camp 5W. And at last, just before sunset, they too came to the flag streaming on the summit of the world. In the fading light, they spent only 15 minutes on top. Then began the descent toward the South Col. Soon it was night, but they kept groping down, and in the blackness they shouted, hoping that their voices might be heard below. Faint voices came back to them, guiding them down. And at 9:30, they joined forces with Gersted and Bishop. Then the four went on together until after midnight, when darkness and exhaustion forced a halt. Sinking down on an outcrop of rock at 28,000 feet, they waited for morning. On all but a few nights in a whole year, they would have died in the cold and wind. But this was one night in 100. The mountain was merciful. The night was still and windless. And in the morning, they were again able to move down. On the way, they were met by their support team, and on they came. Now they have reached Camp 1, at the head of the icefall. They've won a great victory, but paid a price for it. Willie Unsold's feet are frozen, and so are those of Barry Bishop and Loot Gersted. But still, they all reach base camp under their own power. It's a great moment as they arrive. Now the descent to the lowlands begins. Gersted, Bishop, and Unsold are unable to walk, only Hornbein escaping without frozen feet. A radio message has been sent to Kathmandu asking that a helicopter be sent to one of the Sherpa villages at 12,000 feet. And now the 20th century has reappeared. Unsold and Bishop will be flown out. Gersted's feet are better. He'll be able to walk out with the others. But for Unsold and Bishop, the frostbite is severe. After a long siege in the hospital, they will both lose their toes. As Barry Bishop himself has said, on Everest, There are no true victors. There are only survivors. In an hour, Unsold and Bishop will be in Kathmandu. The others, led by Norman Durenfurth, will march out to the world of the lowlands. Behind them, Everest recedes. The adventure is over. But for those who climbed it, those who did battle on Mount Everest, it was more than an adventure. It was a challenge, a dream, a vision. The adventure is over. The vision